Welcome to our deep dive into the philosophy of Hans-Georg Gadamer.
Oh, yes.
Now, he might not be a household name like some of the big, philosophical giants out there,
Yep.
but trust me, his ideas are hugely influential.
Oh, they are.
We're talking about a 20th century thinker who really shook up how we understand, well, everything.
That's right.
So for this deep dive, we've got the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy's entry on Gadamer,
Okay.
which is like the gold standard,
Yeah.
for in-depth philosophical info.
Yeah.
But before we get into the nitty-gritty, let's kind of set the stage a little bit.
Okay.
Imagine you're about to have a conversation with Gadamer himself.
Hmm.
What questions would you, as a fellow philosopher, I guess,
Right.
want to ask about how we understand the world, ourselves, even each other?
Yeah.
Keep those in mind as we dive into his world.
Well, to understand Gadamer, you have to start with his unique background.
Okay.
He was trained in both Neo-Kantian thought, which is all about systems and categories,
Oh.
and classical philology, which means deep immersion in texts, language, and history.
So he's got this blend of rigorous structure and deep textual analysis.
Exactly.
I can already see how that might lead to some interesting ideas.
Exactly. And it's crucial to remember he was also deeply influenced by Heidegger,
Oh, okay.
the existentialist heavyweight.
Right.
Though Gadamer is often considered a bit more, shall we say, accessible in his writing.
Heidegger can definitely be a challenge to decipher.
Oh.
But even with those influences, Gadamer really forged his own path.
He did.
I mean, he was known for his dialogical approach,
Right.
believing that real understanding comes from conversation, from engagement, not just solitary thinking.
Yes.
He even did philosophical interviews.
Yeah, that's right. That's absolutely key to grasping his work.
Wow.
For Gadamer, knowledge isn't something you just passively absorb.
Right.
It emerges from this back and forth, this push and pull of different perspectives meeting.
Which makes perfect sense when you think about his focus on hermeneutics, right? But I think a lot of people hear hermeneutics and think it's just about interpreting texts,
Yeah.
like figuring out what some ancient philosopher really meant.
Right. And while traditional hermeneutics was very much about biblical interpretation
Okay.
and later expanded to history and the humanities, Gadamer took it much further. He saw hermeneutics as the foundation of all understanding how we make sense of anything in the world.
So every time we encounter something new, try to understand a new concept or even just have a conversation with someone, we're engaging in hermeneutics.
Precisely. And at the heart of Gadamer's hermeneutics is this really intriguing concept called the hermeneutic circle.
Okay.
It's the idea that what we already know shapes how we see new things.
Okay.
But those very encounters also change what we know.
Right.
It's a constant back and forth.
So our understanding is never static. It's always evolving based on our experiences and interactions.
Exactly.
It's like this ever-expanding spiral of knowledge.
Exactly. And this is where one of Gadamer's most controversial, perhaps counterintuitive ideas comes in. The role of prejudice.
Now, hold on. We're not talking about prejudice in the negative sense, like
Mhm.
bigotry or discrimination.
Of course not. Gadamer uses prejudice to mean prejudgment.
Okay.
The assumptions and frameworks we bring to any situation, they're not inherently bad. They're simply our starting point.
Right.
We can't approach anything without some pre-existing understanding, even if we're not fully aware of it.
So are you saying that even to begin to understand something new, we need these prejudgments, these initial frameworks to give us a foothold?
Exactly. Without any prejudices, we'd be completely lost, unable to even begin making sense of the world.
Wow.
Think about how this relates to the hermeneutic circle. Our prejudgments provide that initial point of reference.
Okay.
And then through experience, through dialogue, we test and revise those prejudgments, deepening our understanding in the process.
So it's not about eliminating prejudice altogether, which would be impossible,
Right.
but about recognizing that it's always there, influencing how we see the world.
Yes.
And being willing to change our minds, to revise our prejudgments as we learn and grow.
Precisely. Which brings us to another one of Gadamer's key concepts,
Okay.
the fusion of horizons.
Okay.
He recognized that understanding is always historically situated.
Okay.
We're influenced by the traditions, the culture, the time period we're a part of.
But he doesn't see us as trapped by our history, does he?
Not at all. He believes that when we encounter something or someone different, when we engage in genuine dialogue,
Right.
our individual horizons of understanding can fuse, creating something new.
Okay.
It's like those Venn diagrams where the overlapping section represents that new shared understanding.
It's like when you have a really good conversation with someone from a completely different background.
Yes.
You both bring your own perspectives and experiences, and through that exchange, something new emerges, a new way of seeing things.
That's a great way to put it. And for Gadamer, this fusion of horizons is not just about intellectual understanding, it's also about ethical growth. It's about expanding our capacity for empathy, for seeing the world through the eyes of others.
Okay, so we've got this interplay of prejudgments, the hermeneutic circle, and this fusion of horizons.
Right.
It's complex, but I'm starting to see how it all fits together.
And all of this is taking place within the medium of language,
Okay.
which for Gadamer isn't just a tool for communication, but the very foundation of understanding itself.
So we can only make sense of the world because we have language to grasp and articulate those concepts.
Exactly.
It's like language is the operating system for our understanding.
Exactly. This echoes thinkers like Wittgenstein,
Right.
who argued against the idea of a private language.
Okay.
Language only makes sense in a shared world, a world we build together through communication and understanding.
Which reinforces Gadamer's emphasis on dialogue, on that back and forth exchange of ideas.
Exactly.
It's like we're all part of this giant ongoing conversation, constantly shaping and reshaping our understanding of the world through language.
Precisely. And for Gadamer, this isn't just some abstract philosophical theory.
Right.
It has profound implications for how we live our lives, how we relate to each other, and how we make sense of the complexities of the human experience.
So it's not just about understanding Gadamer's ideas, it's about using those ideas to better understand ourselves and the world around us.
Yes.
And that, I think, is where things start to get really interesting.
It is.
But before we go there, I'm curious about how Gadamer saw the relationship between his own work and the history of philosophy.
Okay.
He seems so aware of the philosophical conversations that came before him.
That's a great observation.
Mm.
He didn't see philosophy as a linear progression,
Okay.
where each generation simply discards the ideas of the previous one.
Right.
For him, it was more like a grand ongoing dialogue where different voices and perspectives continue to illuminate different aspects of truth.
So he wasn't trying to reinvent the wheel. He was adding his own unique voice to this ongoing philosophical symphony.
Exactly. And while he engaged with a range of thinkers, he had a particular focus on Plato, Aristotle, Hegel, and of course his mentor Heidegger.
I can't wait to dig deeper into those connections and see how they shaped Gadamer's own unique contribution to philosophical thought.
Yeah, me too.
It's fascinating stuff.
Absolutely. Welcome back to our deep dive into the philosophy of Hans-Georg Gadamer.
It's fascinating to see how these foundational ideas like the hermeneutic circle and the fusion of horizons play out in different areas of his thought.
Right.
Last time we were talking about how Gadamer saw language as this essential medium for understanding.
Yeah.
But he didn't stop there. He went on to apply these ideas to art, which he saw as another powerful way of encountering truth.
And that's where things get really interesting for Gadamer. Art wasn't just about aesthetics or personal enjoyment. It was about encountering truth not in a factual or scientific sense, but in a way that reveals something deep and profound about the human experience.
So it's not like art gives us a literal truth about the world, but more of an experiential truth, a truth that we feel and grasp through engagement with the artwork.
Exactly. It's about those deeper truths that science can't quite capture the truth of art. For Gadamer lies in its ability to open up new worlds of meaning, to expand our horizons of understanding, and to challenge our preconceived notions.
It's like art shakes us out of our everyday routines and makes us see the world with fresh eyes, revealing things we might otherwise miss.
Precisely. It's a kind of awakening and invitation to step outside our usual ways of thinking and perceiving.
Okay, so I remember you mentioned last time that Gadamer saw art as play, symbol, and festival.
Yes.
I have to admit, those don't sound like the usual ways of describing art. Can you break those down for us?
Sure, for Gadamer, these three aspects are intertwined, each illuminating the others, and together revealing the true nature of art. Play, for example, takes us out of our ordinary goal-oriented mindset. When we engage with art, we enter a space where the usual rules and expectations are suspended.
Like we give ourselves permission to be curious, to explore, to just be without any pressure to produce a specific outcome.
Exactly. And in that playful space, new possibilities of understanding and connection can emerge now. The symbolic nature of art is crucial because it allows art to point beyond itself, to evoke meanings and emotions that go beyond what's literally depicted.
So a symbol isn't just a representation of something, it's a doorway to a deeper meaning.
Right. For Gadamer, a symbol hints at something that can't be fully grasped or expressed in words. It's like how a particular scent can instantly evoke a powerful memory or emotion, even though the scent itself is just a chemical compound.
That makes sense. And then there's this idea of art as festivals. Can you explain what Gadamer meant by that?
Think about the experience of a festival. People come together often to celebrate something, to share a common experience. There's a sense of community, of belonging, of being part of something larger than oneself.
Okay, I can see that. It's like when you're at a concert and everyone's singing along to the same song, you feel connected to the people around you, even if you've never met them before.
Exactly. And for Gadamer, art can have that same transformative power. When we engage with a work of art, we step outside our individual perspectives and enter into a shared space of meaning and understanding.
So it's like art creates this temporary escape from the everyday world, a chance to connect with something universal, something that transcends our individual differences.
Precisely. And Gadamer believed that this experience of art as festival is essential for cultivating our sense of belonging, our sense of shared humanity.
Now, I know Gadamer was deeply engaged with the history of philosophy, particularly with figures like Hegel and Plato. How did their ideas influence his thinking about art?
Well, from Hegel, Gadamer took the idea that art embodies and expresses the values, beliefs, and aspirations of a particular culture or historical period. He saw this as crucial for understanding the historical dimension of art.
So art isn't just about individual expression, it's also a product of its time, a reflection of the collective spirit of a particular era.
Exactly, and we can't fully appreciate a work of art without understanding the historical context in which it was created. Imagine trying to understand a piece of political satire without knowing anything about the political climate of the time. You'd miss all the nuances and layers of meaning.
That's a great point. Now, what about Plato? Didn't he have some pretty negative things to say about art?
He did. Plato saw art as a mere copy of reality and therefore inferior to the real thing. But Gadamer gave this concept of mimesis, or imitation, a distinctly hermeneutical twist.
So instead of seeing art as a passive reflection of reality, Gadamer saw it as an active interpretation.
Exactly. He argued that art isn't simply about creating a perfect replica, but about capturing the essence, the truth of something through the artist's unique vision and understanding.
So it's not just about what the artist sees, but how they see it, how they interpret and make meaning from the world around them.
Precisely. And in that sense, Gadamer saw art as a form of knowledge, a way of revealing truths that might not be accessible through other means. And this brings us back to the fusion of horizons. When we engage with a work of art, our own horizon of understanding merges with the horizon of the artist, creating a new and expanded perspective.
So it's a dialogue, a back and forth between the viewer and the artist, mediated through the work of art.
A perfect way to put it. And in that dialogue, new insights and understandings can emerge. We might even come to see the world differently as a result.
That's pretty powerful. But I have to ask, with all this talk about truth and understanding, did Gadamer see art as primarily an intellectual exercise? Did he acknowledge the role of emotion and personal experience?
He absolutely did for Gadamer. The experience of art wasn't just about grasping concepts or ideas. It was about being moved, touched, transformed by the work of art.
It's like those moments when a piece of music makes you cry, or a painting takes your breath away. You can't always explain why it affects you so deeply, but you know it's touched something profound within you.
Exactly. And those moments of aesthetic experience are crucial for developing our capacity for empathy, for understanding the experiences of others, even those very different from ourselves.
So it's not just about personal enjoyment. It's about cultivating our moral and emotional sensibilities, our ability to connect with others on a deeper level.
Precisely. And in that sense, Gadamer saw art as having a profound ethical dimension.
Now, I know Gadamer was especially fond of poetry. What was it about poetry that he found so compelling?
Well, he believed that poetry had this unique ability to condense and concentrate meaning, to evoke a whole world of experience in just a few carefully chosen words.
It's like those poems that pack so much emotion and imagery into just a few lines, leaving you speechless and breathless.
That's exactly the kind of experience Gadamer was talking about. He saw poetry as a way of distilling the essence of human experience, capturing those fleeting moments of insight and understanding that might otherwise slip away.
It's like poetry freezes time, allowing us to savor those precious moments of beauty and truth.
And for Gadamer, the beauty of poetry lay not just in its formal qualities, but in its ability to create a world that we can enter into, a world that invites us to see things differently.
So it's not just about appreciating the craft of the poet, but about allowing ourselves to be transported by the words, to experience the world through their eyes.
Exactly. And in that sense, Gadamer saw poetry as a powerful tool for expanding our horizons of understanding, for challenging our preconceived notions, and for enriching our experience of the world.
Now, I know we've been talking a lot about the theoretical side of Gadamer's aesthetics, But did he also have practical advice on how we should engage with art in our everyday lives?
Absolutely. He was a firm believer in the importance of aesthetic education, of cultivating our capacity to appreciate and understand art. It wasn't just about visiting museums or reading poetry every now and then. He saw it as an ongoing practice, a way of enriching our lives and deepening our understanding of ourselves and the world.
So it's about actively seeking out those experiences that move and inspire us, about making art a part of our daily lives.
Precisely. And those experiences, Gadamer argued, are essential for developing our moral and emotional sensibilities, for expanding our capacity for empathy and understanding, and for fostering a sense of shared humanity.
I think that's a message we could all use a little more of in the world today.
Indeed, and it leads us beautifully into the final part of our exploration, where we'll delve into the practical implications of Gadamer's hermeneutics, its relevance for understanding not just art, but also our everyday lives, our relationships, and even our ethical choices.
I'm eager to see how Gadamer's ideas translate into action, into a way of being in the world that's more thoughtful, more engaged, and ultimately more meaningful. Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of Hans-Georg Gadamer.
It's amazing how much ground we've covered already, from his core concepts like the hermeneutic circle and the fusion of horizons to his thought-provoking views on art.
You know what's always struck me about Gadamer is that he wasn't just writing abstract philosophical treatises for other academics.
Yeah.
He was genuinely concerned with how these ideas could translate into a more thoughtful, ethical way of life.
Precisely. And that's what makes Gadamer so relevant even today. His ideas have real-world implications for how we understand ourselves, how we relate to others, and how we navigate the complexities of life.
Okay, I'm ready to get practical.
Yeah.
How do we actually apply Gadamer's insights to our everyday lives?
Well, I think one of the most important takeaways from Gadamer is the idea that understanding is an ongoing process, a journey of dialogue and engagement.
Okay.
It's not a destination we arrive at, but a path we continuously walk.
So it's not about acquiring a fixed set of knowledge,
Right.
but about cultivating a mindset of openness, of curiosity, of always being willing to learn and grow.
Exactly. And that's where the hermeneutic circle becomes so important. It reminds us that we always come to any situation with prejudgments, with a certain horizon of understanding.
Right.
But through dialogue, through encountering other perspectives, our horizons expand and we reach a new understanding.
Which then becomes the starting point for further dialogue and further growth. It's a beautiful cycle of continuous learning.
It is, and it applies to everything, our relationships, our careers, our understanding of the world. It's all constantly evolving through this process of dialogue and engagement.
But let's be honest, it's not always easy to embrace that process.
No, it's not.
It can be challenging to question our assumptions, to listen to others, to be open to the possibility that we might be wrong.
Absolutely. But Gadamer believed this openness is essential for ethical living. If we're not willing to consider different viewpoints, we risk becoming closed-minded and dogmatic.
It's like those people who are so stuck in their own way of thinking
Yeah.
that they refuse to even entertain the possibility of another perspective.
Yeah.
It's frustrating and, frankly, a bit disheartening.
It is, and Gadamer saw that kind of rigidity as ultimately harmful, both to ourselves and to society as a whole.
So how do we cultivate this openness, this willingness to engage in dialogue and challenge our own beliefs?
Yeah.
It's easy to say be more open-minded, but actually doing it can be quite difficult.
Well, Gadamer believed one powerful way is through encountering great works of art and literature.
There's that connection to art again.
Of course, he saw art as a vital tool for expanding our horizons and making us see the world differently. It's not just about passively consuming art, but about actively engaging with it, wrestling with its ideas, and allowing it to transform our understanding.
So it's about finding those works that challenge us, that make us think in new ways, that shake up our comfortable perspectives.
Exactly. And as we engage with art in this way, we begin to develop our capacity for empathy, for understanding the experiences of others, even those very different from ourselves.
It's like art allows us to step into someone else's shoes, to see the world through their eyes, to experience things from a completely different perspective.
Precisely. And that expansion of our horizons is essential for ethical living. If we're only able to see the world from our own limited perspective, then it's easy to become judgmental, intolerant, and even cruel.
But if we can learn to see the world through the eyes of others, to understand their stories, then we're more likely to treat them with compassion and respect.
Exactly. And that, for Gadamer, was at the very heart of what it means to be human.
Now, I know Gadamer also placed a great deal of importance on tradition and history.
Yes.
How do those concepts fit into his idea of ethical living?
That's a great question. It's easy to think of tradition and history as static or irrelevant to modern life, but Gadamer saw them as vital for understanding ourselves and our place in the world.
So it's not about clinging to the past or rejecting progress, but about recognizing how the past shapes the present and influences who we are.
Exactly. We are all products of our history, of the traditions that have been passed down to us. And Gadamer believed we can't fully understand ourselves without understanding those
It's
traditions.
like trying to understand a tree without knowing anything about its roots.
Right.
You might see the leaves and branches, but you'll miss the deeper story.
That's a great analogy. And for Gadamer, this understanding of tradition was essential for ethical living. He argued that if we reject our history, we risk losing our sense of identity and belonging.
So it's not about blindly following tradition, but about recognizing that it provides a foundation, a sense of continuity and connection to something larger than ourselves.
Precisely. And that connection, that sense of belonging, is crucial for a healthy society.
Now, throughout our exploration of Gadamer's thought, the theme of language has kept coming up. Why was language so central to his philosophy?
For Gadamer, language wasn't just a tool for communication. It was the very medium of understanding. It's through language that we make sense of the world, relate to others, and even come to understand ourselves.
So it's not just about the words themselves, but about the shared world. Those words create the way language allows us to connect with each other and build a shared understanding.
Exactly. Language is the bridge that connects us to one another and to the world around us, and Gadamer saw this connection as crucial for ethical living.
So it's not enough to just say the right things. It's about using language to create understanding, to build bridges, to foster genuine dialogue.
Precisely, and that requires a certain sensitivity to language and awareness of its power to both illuminate and obscure.
It's about using language thoughtfully, carefully, and with a deep respect for its ability to shape our perceptions and relationships.
Exactly. And as we develop this sensitivity to language, we also develop our capacity for ethical understanding.
As we wrap up this deep dive into the world of Hans-Georg Gadamer, I'm struck by how rich and multifaceted his philosophy is.
Me too.
His ideas touch on so many aspects of the human experience, from art and language to history, tradition, and ethics.
It's true.
And what's remarkable is how he manages to weave all these threads together into a coherent and compelling vision. It's like he's given us a new way of seeing the world, a way that emphasizes interconnectedness, dialogue, and ethical responsibility.
Yes, and that's the enduring legacy of Gadamer. He reminds us that philosophy isn't just an academic discipline, it's a way of life. It's about asking difficult questions, challenging our assumptions, and striving for a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
It's about embracing the hermeneutic journey, this constant process of dialogue and growth.
And recognizing that this journey isn't just intellectual, it's deeply ethical. How we understand the world shapes how we act within it.
So as we conclude our exploration, I hope you'll take Gadamer's insights with you. Let them inform your own journey of understanding growth and ethical living.
Me too, I hope so.
And if our deep dive has sparked your curiosity, we encourage you to explore the world of Hans-Georg Gadamer.
Yeah.
Further, there's a wealth of wisdom waiting to be discovered.
So much.
Until next time, happy philosophizing.